Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. So today I want to give you guys the rundown, my opinion, my experiences, everything that I think has been going down as a result of the Gadgetzan expansion that has somewhat recently been released. So prior to Gadgetzan, the Kripparrian expansion did its toll on Hearthstone. Arena, I think, took the biggest hit I've ever seen. I think Arena was in the worst state ever, and this is coming off Whispers the Old Gods, which I think may have been like some of the best Arena play ever, and Constructed the same. Whispers the Old Gods had some really fun Constructed decks, and it was really limited down through the Kripparrian cards that were pumped out. Blizzard tried to fix things in Arena. They made it a little better. Blizzard tried to fix things in Constructed. They made it a little bit better there as well, but still, the game was not in a good spot at all during the end of the Kripparrian expansion still. So Mean Streets of Gadgetzan comes out, and much like any new expansion that has a big impact on the game, there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of joy from just, kind of figuring stuff out. The exploration factor is very cool. In Constructed, it was a little bit short-lived because of the rise of Pirate Warrior. Now, Pirate Warrior I don't even think is the most popular deck right now, but there's a lot of decks that are very much like Pirate Warrior, like Aggro Pirate Shaman, and there's a few others that are doing exactly the same thing. So it made the exploration process a bit more challenging this time around because, there's not really much to explore when you're dead on turn 4, and that happened a lot. So Constructed did get off a little bit on the wrong foot. Now, overall, I feel like the Gadgetzan expansion has been good for the game, but it hasn't really fixed a lot of the long-standing problems that Hearthstone has and generally experiences as more cards enter the pool. So first, let's talk about Arena. So in Arena, we saw the rise of many mediocre and bad classes that have historically really not been played very much at all. To the top of Arena, we saw Warlocks and Priests and Shamans, I think, even got a bump, and Paladins. So, a lot of the classes that people didn't want to play are suddenly very good. I feel like Blizzard really tried to push the balancing of Arena cards, and they did take rarity in mind, at least for a lot of the cards they wanted to push. So, Priest needed a lot of help, so they gave him really good common cards. But I still feel they screwed up the rarity a little bit, and I'll talk about that in a second. So, Arena overall is quite a bit better in my opinion, and the big thing that they improved in the Gadgetzan expansion is that when you're given the option of 3 classes, you will almost certainly get one of the top tier classes as one of your choices. But, you might not necessarily get a good deck, but, you start on a right foot. You start on a refreshing note that, you don't really know what's going to happen. I've had some terrible decks that have done really well because they're a bit aggressive and they have, a bunch of the new cards that are generally pretty damn high power level. So the Arena has been pretty good from that. I did express my displeasure from playing against Priests, and to give you guys an example of why I really hate playing against some of the new cards, take a look at something like Dragonfire Potion. So Dragonfire Potion is an epic quality board clear for Priest, and it's almost impossible to play around because of its rarity. It's also extremely powerful, which also makes it hard to play around, but the rarity is really the challenging part here, because in Arena, when I talked about this on stream yesterday, I looked at my last 5 drafts and I only had 1 epic card across my last 5 decks. Right? So the chance, even with the current bonuses, even class bonuses, even all of that, the chance that you get this specific card in your Priest deck is ridiculously small. It's probably at best, at the very best, like 1 in 15. And I think it's probably much worse than that. So, every 15 Priest decks is going to have this card, and the chance that they have it on curve on turn 6, you drop that by at least half, because, you wouldn't keep that in your opening hand. So basically what that means is in Arena, it is the correct play to always play into this board clear. Even if you think they might have it, it's so unlikely that they have it that you just play into it and hope they don't, and you will win more games if you choose that line of play. And the reason that I think there is a bit of a problem here is it's just kind of like dumb luck. You make the correct play, and dumb luck, if they have the card, if they drew the card, well, you just instantly lose. So I talked about how Arena needs more board clears, and it does need more board clears, but these like gigantic board clears with high rarities are just so like dumb RNG, and I don't like it at all. I think these like high damage board clears are not as good for the game as like the repetitive low damage board clears, something like a double whirlwind board clear or like a triple whirlwind board clear, because a lot of the crap you want to clear is just small minions that have to die 2 or 3 times. So I'd prefer much more that style of board clear, not so much just a high damage number, because it's so hard to actually play around that in the arena environment. But the rarity really screws it over. So you know, you'd think that if you don't like a card, that, you know, you want to make it as rare as possible, but that's not exactly true. So there are a lot of board clears in the game already, and a lot of the powerful ones are the common rarity, and you actually do choose to play around those. So a card like Dragonfire Potion would have actually, at least for Arena, and probably for Constructed because people want to play Dragon Priest, it would have been a better card at the common rarity, because then when you're playing against a priest at like 7-0, you know they have this card. It's not a 1 in 25 chance. It's almost 100% actually, because those are the decks that are going to make it, and it's not that rare at the common rarity. So you do play around it. You think about it, you weigh very close risk situations, and you make strategic plays that really have a lot of thought behind them, whether or not to really play around a card they almost certainly have. Draw it out, you know, make them, force them to play it, then come up with a counterplay. There's so much decision making, but when the odds are so low that they have the card, you just scrap all of that, and if they have it, you just lose. And that's kind of a dumb way to play the game. So I think Blizzard did a pretty good job in Arena overall. We see a lot more class diversity. We see a lot more different plays and stuff, but I feel like there's still a few screw-ups here and there, and this is probably the biggest one that really irritates me, just because I hate losing to just dumb luck, and it seems to happen a little bit more than before. But they didn't really fix the other part of Arena. The other part of Arena is, with every expansion, decks overall just get better and better and better, and because in Arena, all you're really trying to do is curve out and get higher minion quality and removal spells than your opponent, it just feels like it's a very close experience to constructed play. And I think that's something that they should really avoid. I think Arena is much more enjoyable when the overall deck qualities of both players is low. Because when it's high, well, it's just very straightforward. This is the best card, I play the best card. When it's low, sometimes you have to realize that these low cards do have a very niche situation where they might be powerful, but you know, you have to save cards. You don't necessarily have to play on curve, and if you miss a drop, your opponent playing on curve because the card quality is overall low is not going to be as punishing. So Arena got better, you know, really cool cards, better class balancing, all of that, but Arena also got a little bit worse just because it's an expansion with a lot of good cards. So fundamentally, the one of the big problems in Arena was not addressed, and there's also a lot of snowbally cards. So I imagine the other fundamental problem of Arena for going first has a substantially higher win rate than going second across almost every single class, specifically in some. That hasn't really been fixed because there's more snowbally cards, so it's more important to go first now in last expansion. But yeah, so we need bigger changes than that. We need more fundamental changes to the game mode to really make it shine once again. In constructed play, again, at the end of Gadgetzan, it was a really bad spot. And I feel like, I know some people will disagree with me, but I feel like in constructed, Gadgetzan has overall, as opposed to Arena, which has gotten better, I think constructed has actually gotten worse than Gadgetzan. I actually think constructed is probably at its worst spot ever right now. But I know some of you guys are like, no way, I'm having tons of fun in constructed. I agree. I am also having tons of fun in constructed a lot of the time that I play. And that's because there's still a lot of cool deck ideas, cool combos to explore. Most of us haven't been exposed enough to the meta just to really get tired of it. But the type of decks are very low interaction, and the style of play is even more aggressive and tempo driven than the last expansion, and you do see the same decks again and again and again and again. The deck diversity is about as low as the last expansion as well. So I feel like, you know, while a lot of us, to myself to some degree. We still enjoy Constructed a lot. I feel we're kind of in like the honeymoon stage. You know, we're like, oh, new stuff. Oh, that. Oh, I've only lost to Jade Druid 6 times. But then when you lose 20 times, you realize they're just playing on curve and it's kind of just dumb. And you just kind of get bored of it at that stage. So, you know, I think fundamentally Constructed suffered a little bit from this expansion. It did so because decks were more aggressive. They're even simpler to play. It's even more important to play on curve. And a lot of this comes from the fact that Blizzard just printed more ridiculously powerful 1-drops. And they just should not be doing that. Stop printing ridiculously powerful 1-drops. That's about it. Don't do that. Please. Never again. But of course they're going to keep doing that. And again, Constructed, at least in the standard format, suffers from the same problem as Arena. As the card pool gets bigger, the overall deck quality gets higher, and the type of decks that generally get even better than all the rest are fairly aggressive ones. And yes, there are a few counter examples to that. Reno Lock is a pretty interesting and powerful control deck. There are a few of these, but the other problem is that there's so few and they're so good that it's almost impossible to just kind of, wedge yourself in the meta. It's harder than ever to come up with your own deck and be successful with it. And as a result, it's harder than ever to actually succeed when you don't have that many cards. And I think this is a problem that a lot of you guys probably watching, me or checking Reddits and being active in the Hearthstone community don't really realize that. You aren't there yet. But, I play a lot of my free-to-play accounts, and I really have a blast doing that overall. I think in Whispers of the Old Gods, playing on my alt accounts was probably the most fun thing in Hearthstone. And I thought Arena was awesome at that time, right? So, it was so fun to make use of cards that are fairly marginal, not very good, try new situations. And like the marginal, sketchy side decks would actually routinely be able to win against the better net decks that most people were playing at the time. But that is not the case right now. Decks are just so tight, there's such a high power level that if you're not playing very specific deck lists, you're just screwed, right? Like if you make a control deck, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to beat like the aggro piratey stuff? Well, if you do that, then you're going to lose to everything else. There's just so few decks that are broad enough to be able to get in there and actually be successful. And as a free-to-play player, at least on some of my accounts, I have to say that the free-to-play experience is by far the worst I have ever had. I'm not even sure I want to continue playing my free-to-play accounts in this expansion. That's how bad it is. And that is overall a bad thing for the game. Every game, people are going to find something else to do, whether it becomes challenges in their personal lives or, they're more attracted to play a different game or something like that. People naturally stop playing a game. So games usually thrive on the fact that new players are constantly willing to try out the game. There's a pretty good game that historically has been quite fair to free-to-play players, but I feel right now it's in a really bad spot for free-to-play players, and I think the effects of this will be more noticeable in the weeks and months to come. So overall, really cool cards, cool expansion, a few issues with the cards, but when comparing it to something like Gadgetzan, it's wonderful, right? Like I have a few issues with some of the cards they printed for Constructed, some of the issues they printed for the card for Arena, but they're marginal and they're few. So overall, it was a good expansion, but it was just cards. And I don't think you can turn Hearthstone around by just printing more cards. I think both Arena modes and Constructed mode suffer from more fundamental issues that probably require a little bit of extra attention to. So we'll have to see how that is driven in the future. But for now, it's a pretty good game. And if you like what you're doing, keep doing it. And I hope from time to time you enjoy a Crypt video or two. So hope you've enjoyed my review, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.